5 years ago, I had 2 children. Surprise. Now I got 3, and my wife and I are playing zone defense, dragging ourselves through the house all day long. A lot can change in 5 years.
A lot can change. By the way, this is an actual Wall Street Journal from March 4th, 2021. Let's refresh your memory. Do you remember where you were? Let's see some of the headlines. And we'll talk about maybe where we go over the next 5 years. Let's see what we have here. Oh, here we go. Powell confirms Fed to maintain easy money policy. Let's see, the 10-year Treasury 5 years ago, under 1.5%. Next headline, is inflation a risk? Not now, but some see dangers ahead. Then came June 2022. Here's another headline. J&J COVID vaccines are going to ship. Remember that? I too have 3 kids. I hated doing the homework around the kitchen table and trying to teach my 13-year-old algebra. Last headline. Google to stop ad sales. Ad sales, no mention of data centers. Pretty interesting. Think about where you were 5 years ago. So what's happened in 5 years is pretty amazing. Let's talk about it. Inflation peaked in June of 2022. What happened to real estate values? They dropped. Across our portfolio, real estate values dropped anywhere between 15 and 20%. What happened to Treasury yields? They're up from that 1.5%. Yields are more than double, over 4% today. What else happened? COVID, no one went to the office. I think one of the stats on the slide talked about return to office. If you're at JP Morgan, we're in 5 days a week, and over 70% of the companies have return to office in place right now. And last but not least, everyone's favorite, data centers. Was not even a mention 5 years ago. You cannot go anywhere without hearing about data centers today. As investors, why do we bring this up? We have to care about change. And we have to think about where the market is going and where we've been.
Yeah,
Tom?
Chad, to me, that's the point. 5 years is a lifetime. A lot can change. What got us here in commercial real estate is very unlikely to be the things that drive performance going forward. And those that don't adapt today to that change risk being left behind.
We don't want that. All right, so we're super excited. Tom and I spent a lot of time thinking through what we'd share with you today. We're going to run through 3 things on our agenda, and we hope you leave understanding where you think you will all go over the next 5 years. So first, we'll talk about JP Morgan. We have a lot of data. Tom will pull on it. He's a total nerd, by the way. He used to work at the Fed, so you guys are going to have to help reel him in if he gets too deep. We will touch on the macroeconomy. Okay, so how can you invest if you don't know what's going to happen in the overall economy? And we'll overlay our JP Morgan data and our portfolio data on top of the slides that you see. And then last but not least, we know the next 5 years are likely to be unlike the last 5. And so we want to leave you with 4 themes that help you think about how you invest, and 4 themes that we're actively using today. All right, so let's hop right in. Who are we? Well, obviously, we're the U.S.'s largest bank. We're JP Morgan. If you've been to our new headquarters, welcome. It's pretty amazing. It's changing Manhattan. But more than that, we're dominant in real estate. We touch real estate really in $350 billion worth of ways, and we do it as the largest lender in the United States, portfolio over $200 billion. Why is that important for us today? We use that data to think about what's happening in the lending market. We're the #1 advisor to the real estate industry. Exciting as well, understanding capital markets. As a company, including our headquarters, we have a nearly $40 billion corporate portfolio. And then last but not least, Tom and I will talk about the data that we have in the group that I am fortunate enough to lead, our $80 billion global real estate investment management business. What this means is we have a multifaceted view as an owner, a user, an occupier, a lender, and that all comes together to make us better investors. All right, now let's touch on the portfolio that Tom and I lead. Office is our largest allocation, 44 million square feet across the United States. If you've been to Italy or 10 Hudson Yards, or for those of you who may have visited California, I've got a daughter, she loves the Barbie movie. One of our properties was featured there, Century Park Plaza. We're the largest owner of office. In fact, if we were a public REIT, we would rank number 1. Secondly, let's talk about housing. 63,000 units. We would rank 3rd in our peer set. And for housing, we've been focused on single family for rent. We've been focused on affordable multifamily. We've been focused on the Sun Belt. It's been an exciting time to be an owner. Next, we'll quickly just touch on industrial. 55 million square feet, we'd be a top 10 player. It's been a real focus on industrial outdoor storage, truck terminals, net lease. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And last but not least, on this slide is retail. I saw a couple slides on retail, really high-end luxury retail before we came up. 24 million square feet, some of the best malls in the country. We also have a large grocery-anchored shopping center platform that we focus on. All right, so now Tom, we're going to go to you, our data scientist, our tech wonk, and our data wonk. Let's now walk through how we see the macroeconomy.
It is really what goes on at the office. Nerd, wonk. I like to tell myself I'm a recovering central banker. The challenge from the Goodwin team coming here is, Tom, show us what the economy looks like through the Fed lens. So I want to show you how I think the Fed is looking at the world, but really tie it back to real estate and why that matters. It's a very unique time in macro history right now. Tech CapEx is driving growth in this country in a way we've never seen before in the data. And we cannot do it without China. On the left, this is year-over-year tech CapEx and its contribution to growth. The blue line is total GDP growth, real growth. The yellow line is if you removed tech CapEx. Prior to 2023, these two lines were the same exact line. And now there's a historic separation in those two. Tech CapEx is driving growth in this country in a way we have never seen in history. In normal times, consumption, you as an individual going to the store, going to a restaurant, is what drives GDP. We're a 70% consumption business in normal times. This is not normal times. And on the right, China dominates the world stage on production of critical industries. We're going to say this word a lot, critical industries. It overlaps with AI quite a bit. The bar charts on the right are from a presentation that Mario Draghi gave a few years ago. 38% of the world's production in semiconductor and assembly comes from China. 90% of critical mineral processing, particularly for rare earths, come from China, and 76% of battery production comes from China. The world is reliant on China for critical industry, and America's GDP growth is especially reliant on China right now.
Here's what I'd say. Look, there's a lot on this slide. Here's something that's pretty interesting, though. Did you know you can't even use this without rare earths? That's why you're seeing our administration so focused on what can we do to bring these types of things into the United States. And just to put more numbers to what Tom said, that tech spending blue line is worth $670 billion this year alone.
Yeah, I think when you have young children, right, you think about, you can't do electronic motion without processed rare earths. Can't take a picture, can't use your phone, can't use your iPad, can't drive your EV. Imagine what the world would look like if we couldn't get these babies. Quite scary. Chad, great segue. Who's doing this CapEx? You would be forgiven if you thought it was only the hyperscalers. But listen to those numbers. Hyperscalers are doing $600 to $700 billion of CapEx this year. The newspapers of today say it's just data centers. There's way more CapEx beyond a data center, but the hyperscalers are not the only ones who are doing this CapEx for critical industries. The newspapers today talk a lot about, can these hyperscalers keep spending? And on the left shows you the primary hyperscalers: Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Oracle, Google. These are the ones that are doing the heavy CapEx, and they can keep going. This is a very traditional financial metric to see how healthy their balance sheets are. It's the amount of debt they have divided by how much income they make. The vast majority of these hyperscalers have a ratio below 1, which means they have more income than they do debt. They can keep going. But you can't stop here. Hyperscalers are not the only ones investing in the critical industries of America. The US government's doing it too. This chart on the right really is painful for a data guy. This is data as of a year ago. Oh man, boring. But the reason it's as of a year ago is the Biden administration gave us full transparency of how the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act were being spent. Unfortunately, the Trump administration doesn't give it to you. But we can tell it's still going out from the budgets in aggregate. So where were we a year ago? The blue bars show you where the US government was taking its dollar and investing it in critical industry. These are the top 5 states where they were investing: California, Texas, New York, Arizona, Pennsylvania. That represents about 50% of all government dollars spent in just 5 states. The green bars is more fascinating, I think, for commercial real estate investors. Where were private investors following on and taking advantage of tax incentives to do the CapEx? Really only 3 states: Arizona, New York, and Texas. Arizona is the Taiwan semi plant, but now there's a whole ecosystem around that fabrication plant that's being developed. Critical industrial space. Texas and New York have really attractive state incentives in addition to federal, and they have smart people, they have land, they have power. Starting to reshape the industrial sector here. And then just October, Chad, who enters the chat?
JP Morgan. We're pretty much like the punchline of everything. But look, $1.5 trillion, I'm sure many of you saw it. JP Morgan's focused on security and resiliency. It's like the old Jerry Maguire saying, show me the money, okay? Why does this matter? There's too much capital going into these states and really across the country for critical industries for all of us not to take a look at it and think about the impacts it has for real estate. More capital, more manufacturing, means more jobs, higher occupancy, more rent growth. That's why we care about it. Just to give you a sense of what JP Morgan's doing, $1.5 trillion commitment spread over 10 years, really focused on 4 industry groups or areas across 27 subgroups. The 4 areas are advanced manufacturing and supply chains, aerospace and defense, energy independence, strategic tech, including data infrastructure, but there's just too much here not to notice. And 5 years from now, we'll be talking about how much capital was invested across the United States around resiliency to protect the interests of our country.
The point here for me is twofold. Number one, in the history of America, you really haven't seen private equity, public equity, and now private financing all pointed at the same thing at the same time since World War II or maybe the Cold War. This build-out of technology, point number 2, is a national defense issue. There's critical reliance on the rest of the world that probably has gone too far thanks to the era of globalization. And in some respects, you can make a real big, bold statement and say the era of globalization is over. But really, you have to fine-tune that. The era of globalization is over for critical industry, and critical industry overlaps with artificial intelligence. Point number 2, why is this important? When all 3 things are pointed at the same exact investment, it's durable. This is likely to just keep going. And unraveling, we often say it's just politics. This is not just politics, right? JP Morgan, hyperscalers are in there too. So this becomes a really durable theme.
So the next 3 slides I'm super excited about. I'm flying to Hong Kong on Sunday, and in every pitch book we have, the next 3 slides always catch the attention of the CIO. We're going to talk about diversification, inflation protection, correlations, but really CIOs around the world are going to be asking a lot of questions, and it typically comes down to the next 3 slides.
Go with me for a second. If you imagine that the era of globalization is over, does it even matter? Well, what is globalization? Where a CEO can take an input to its supply chain from anywhere in the world as long as it's the cheapest input. That was globalization. And if it's over, it means you can't just take the cheapest input. So straight away in your head, you should say, oh, inflation is higher. And if you read the newspaper, that's happening every day. But if you're an investor, you're a CIO, it has bigger ramifications than that. trying to make a complex world very simple with one chart. Stocks and bonds have, for the last 20 years, been packaged together in what's called a 60-40 portfolio. 60% equities, 40% bonds. Why? Because the bonds were good diversifiers to the stocks. I think that era is really over. What I'm showing you here is the correlation between stocks and bonds over time. It's a rolling 3-year window. Prior to China joining the WTO, stocks and bonds were positively correlated. Stock goes down in value, bond goes down in value. No diversification benefits. And in fact, what did CIOs lean on for diversification benefits back then? Real assets, infrastructure, commercial real estate. After China joins the WTO, we have a golden age of diversification and globalization. Negative correlation between stocks and bonds. Stocks go down in value, bonds go up. And then here we are right now. In the post-COVID era, stocks and bonds are positively correlated again. For my market daily watchers, this week there's an Iran invasion that's happening. Stocks and bonds are strongly positively correlated. No diversification benefits. So when you show this to a CIO, you get to do a lot of things. Statistically, something's different. Then I get to bring in the conversation about tech and the connection to China. Something changed when China joined the WTO. And to believe that you have an inverse correlation forever, you have to believe that China and America will wake up and say, it's all good. Just give me all your inputs. And you can go a lot deeper there, but I generally don't and allow a CIO to do it for me. So what do? This is my favorite chart from JP Morgan's Guide to Alternatives. If you haven't checked it out, I challenge you to go look at it. It is an unbiased data approach to investing in alternatives. We call it the planet chart. All the way to the right is the 60-40 portfolio. That's the planet I want you to think about as the sun. These other planets are things you could consider as alternative investments to the 60-40. As you move from right to left, diversification benefits go up. As you move from bottom to top, trailing 10-year total returns go up. I hope what jumps out to you is all those blue planets, where diversification is strong, right? Inverse correlation to the 60-40, and returns look really healthy, talking 8 to 12% total returns. The light blue is real estate. Real estate stands out as a great diversifier, strong returns, and the size of the bubble is yield. CIOs love this chart as a way to think forward, not thinking about what worked in the last 5 years, what's going to work in the next 5. And let's enter the chat, commercial real estate. Of all of these planets, commercial real estate has felt the most pain. Its valuation has reset the most. We've just gone through one of the top 3 repricings in commercial real estate in the last 50 years. We've all felt that. That's the point about what Survive in 25 was like. The left-hand chart is showing you historical growth in Odyssey capital, so core diversified capital. It grows over time just like the stock market. It's a nominally adjusting asset. The first correction was in the early 90s. The worst correction over time was the GFC, and we just went through about an 18% decline in Odyssey capital. But if you squint, all the way in the top left, you can see that the blue mass is now rising again. The prior 2 instances, what did we learn? 13 to 15-year bull run ensued, and your equity multiple was 4 to 5 times. Why did we have such long expansions? Is that existing value of real estate and replacement costs had a historic spread. Right now, on average, that difference is about 25%. Meaning, replacement cost is 25% more than the existing valuation. Building is really tough in that market. And on the right just plots those expansions over time. The red line shows you we're just getting started. This chart to a CIO screams to them, I have an opportunity set. I have an entry point and a diversifier and an expected return that could be really helpful to reach their goals.
Here's what's fascinating. So I got started really in the great financial crisis, and I don't know about you, but I remember back in 2008, we thought the market would never turn. And then when it did, it really took off, and it took off in a big way. So just to come back to kind of where Tom started, look, on the macro and how we think about real estate, a couple key points to take away. One, tech spending will continue. It's going to happen. So how is that going to flow through your own portfolio? What do you buy? How do you think about it? Tom showed the 5 states that are going to get the most capital. What can you do with that data? I think, two, public and private investment is going to continue to focus on critical industries. Companies like JP Morgan all around the world focused here. So much of a benefit to the United States. 3, here comes real estate, the great diversifier, inflation protector, cash flow generator. We now know that stocks and bonds are now positively correlated. And then last but not least, and I'll say it's urgent, the time's now to get in. 4 to 5 times your capital, getting in at the bottom. Across our portfolio, we look at it globally, $80 billion. We have had a positive quarter every single quarter across the portfolio for 7 quarters in a row. Okay, so where do we go? Tom's going to take out his crystal ball. We're going to show some of the deals that we've done. Next 5 years, super exciting. We're going to knock out 4 key themes. 4 themes for the next 5 years.
All right, theme number 1. Asset selection is finally going to matter. I say finally, because for the last 5 years, if you were a commercial real estate investor, all you had to do was buy industrial and be short office. There was historic dispersion between the major food groups of commercial real estate. This chart is showing you over time returns based on those major food groups, so retail, office, industrial, and where the dispersion was. In normal times, let's say pre-COVID, asset selection drives performance. You can't just say I like industrial versus office. But look what happened during COVID. Again, all you had to do is be long industrial. You were the best investor if all you just said, I can take the right sector. Doesn't matter what the assets are. And what was born was a lot of CIOs that just said, I'm going to a sector-specific manager. But now we're coming back to the more normal times, where dispersion among sectors is very small, and what's going to drive your performance is asset selection. We have a team of over 100 asset manager and acquisition folks that this is what they do all day long. We have a track record of asset selection outperformance. This is one chart that screams big diversified managers have an edge as we move forward. The edge is particularly important because the world is moving to extended sectors, alternative sectors. Every year, Odyssey managers tell the world what they expect to do with their asset allocation as they move forward. Here's what they're telling you right now. They're going to take down their office allocation over the next 3 to 5 years by almost 4 percentage points. Retail and industrial are going to stay about the same, and they are going to add exposure to residential and what we call extended sectors. Things like IOS, single family for rent, net lease. And why are they going there? I think there's 3 primary reasons they're going there. Number 1 is, historically, these extended sectors give you better returns with less risk. Okay, that feels good. Second is they tend to be smaller deals. I can get more liquidity in this space, and if the Trump administration gets what they want, and you can now invest your 401k in alternatives, you're going to need more liquidity in this space. And then the third one is these extended sectors really aren't institutionalized yet. We can come in, buy many, many small sites, aggregate and get scale. This is where the world is going. Asset selection in an extended sector is going to be critical, and of course, we think we have an edge there.
All right, so Tom mentioned you can't just go buy bulk housing and win. So what do we do? How do we think about it? We talked about extended sectors. We talked about industrial outdoor storage, also known as IOS. So let's give you a couple examples of how we think about it. All right, so our thesis around single family is that people will be renting for longer. What makes us think that? How do we know? 5 years ago, the average first-time homebuyer was 33. When I went to college, it was in your 20s. Today, the average first-time homebuyer is 40. So I've got a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I'm worried that they will not be able to afford to buy a house. 5 years ago, first-time home purchase, roughly $290,000 today. It's over $425,000 to buy your first home. That means people will rent for longer. And we all know, right? If you're a little bit older and you have kids, what do you want? You want a great school district, you want more space. So the deal that you see is a single family for rent community, 212 units, it's in Arizona, it's near manufacturing jobs, it's in an A- school district, and you have all the amenities that you would want. It's got a pool, it's got a clubhouse, it's pretty amazing. The other thing is, there's single family homes that are for sale that are adjacent to this, and you would not be able to tell the difference between what is a rental and what is actually owned. So as we look at this, there's a couple things we're focused on. One is job growth in the immediate community. Two is schools. If you have a great school district, we also like larger units. 70% of the 200 plus units here are 3 to 5 bedrooms. It's pretty amazing for growth. And then last but not least, we look for a differential in the cost to own versus rent. For example, this property rents for $2,500 a month. If you were to buy a single family home that looks very similar to that, your payment would be over $3,500 a month, and you'd also have a down payment. All right, let's move from left to right. Let's talk about net lease and iOS. Tom mentioned it. It's more of an aggregation strategy. We're really focused on middle market real estate. So we're buying assets between $10 million and $100 million and aggregating them, dollar cost averaging through the market. Creates a great liquidity profile for us. We can sell assets to small groups as one-off and packages. For the net lease portfolio, it's been really interesting. It's been focused on manufacturing, really riding the tailwind on everything that Tom talked about on the economy and where flows are going. It's great for companies that need liquidity. They're typically private. They typically have about a revenue of around $1 billion, and they typically need to grow. So they can take an illiquid asset, the real estate, they can sell it to us as an investor, and they can lease it back for 20 years. It's been an amazing opportunity for us. Secondly, we're also looking at industrial outdoor storage. So this is where trucks, buses, outdoor materials are stored, or they go to park at night. It's really important for everything that we do for the infrastructure of the country, but guess what? Industrial outdoor storage is shrinking as an asset class. People don't want a parking lot in their community, and municipalities do not get tax revenue from it. So you've got shrinking supply and growing demand, and that's exactly where we're focused over the next 5 years. These are great examples. All right, next we're going to talk about life after e-commerce. Let's go to theme number 3.
Theme number 2, bud. Don't rush me.
Oh,
too
number
much,
2.
Okay? He's trying to get me through my data too fast, guys. Looking backwards, America has focused on building out its Give Me My Stuff Now network. In the last 20 years, America has added about 5 billion square feet of logistics space. Over that same time, only about 300 million square feet of manufacturing space. Why would we do that? We needed to speed up. We needed to get our stuff now. This location, right here where we're standing, you can get an Amazon box delivered within 2 hours, if you wanted to. So there is still some time to shrink the delivery time, but not very much. And what we're seeing on the left is that there is a convergence between retail, brick and mortar sales growth, and e-commerce sales growth. We're reaching an equilibrium between e-commerce and the way that we engage with retail. So the blue line is e-commerce year-over-year sales growth going back 15 years. The yellow line is brick and mortar, same store, year-over-year sales growth. Visually, I hope you see the blue line is consistently above the yellow line. And when you look at the most recent data points, they're about the same. Both seeing sales growth of just under 5% in the trailing 1 year. We're reaching an equilibrium. The way I bring that to life is I generally have about 3 packages that get delivered to my house every day, and I generally return one of them to Whole Foods while I pick up groceries for my family. We're reaching an omni-channel saturation where these two things have figured out how to coexist. When you look at the data in Europe, they're not there yet, but in America, it feels like we're at an equilibrium. And then at the same time, the industrial sector is getting shocked by investment and CapEx of critical industries. And what we're seeing in our portfolio is that there is a new defining characteristic of the industrial sector. It's not warehouse anymore, it's power. Does the industrial asset have enough power to bring onshore the types of businesses that are getting onshored? So On the right is our portfolio total returns in the industrial sector over the last year. If you have less than 2,000 amps in one of our assets, your total return was 2.8%. Ampage is not relatable to me, so the average house has about 100 to 200 amps, just to feel the scale of this power need. 2,000 to 4,000 amps, your total return stepped up to 3.6, and 4,000 amps or more, which is the gold standard for power, total returns were 8%. Why is this differentiation happening? If you're going to onshore an aerospace and defense business, a robotics business, a pharmaceutical plant, you need power. And America has not built this type of product for over 20 years. We focused on this logistics network. This theme really ties back to that technology spend to start. Power is the new defining characteristic in industrial, and it's not evenly distributed. Power is not a ubiquitous concept in America. There are 3 distinct energy grids in America, and they do not talk to each other. And most of the power in America is in the middle of the country, straight up and down. There's pockets in California, there's also pockets in New York. But you can't just stand up a high-powered industrial property anywhere. You have to know the right place, have the right asset selection for it too.
Yeah, we'll show you a video here in a second, but the reason this power is so important as well is you typically hear about power with data centers. That's like typically what you hear. Why? Computing takes a lot of power. But what's fascinating is I've actually got a father-in-law who's in Iowa, and he runs an advanced manufacturing facility, and he actually worked with the power grid to get more power so he could run more robots, he could run complex programs that are all digital to improve output for manufacturing. Manufacturing demand is up, what, 50% over the last few years?
50% per year for the last 5 years.
And we need that to meet the demand of all the capital that's coming in when we talk about nearshoring or onshoring. All right, Tom, let's show the video.
Great.
Tariffs get all the headlines. But what people aren't talking about is how the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act are incentivizing the onshoring of critical industries like semiconductors, aerospace and defense, and robotics. Over the last 5 years, demand for manufacturing space has increased by 50% per year on average. The manufacturing that is being onshored might be a little different than what you imagined. This is Douglas Park Enclave in LA County, our 70-acre site that is part of a larger 240-acre master plan business park. You may be asking yourself, I thought LA made movies, not rockets and cars. Well, this area has become a cluster for cutting-edge engineering and manufacturing. Tenants are coming here because of the labor talent and the amenity base. LA has the largest manufacturing base in the country with 440,000 workers. The business park setting includes a 26-acre retail center, significant outdoor space, something that no other industrial park can compete with, and both of these are key to employers attracting top engineers. This is a special site among the largest master planned industrial sites in LA County. Onshoring is happening, but it's not t-shirts. America is onshoring critical industries that demand high power capacity and highly skilled labor. We expect this onshoring to reshape the industrial sector in the years ahead.
I know what you're thinking, and it's true. I'm a lot skinnier in real life. I know what you're thinking. What stands out about this property is that it doesn't have the traditional characteristics, at least to me, of what I think a manufacturing site is. It's now starting to meld something closer to what an office building looks like. It has amenities. It has places where people want to spend more time at this site. This is a very unique site, and we tried to drive that home in this video. But there's convergence across these industries as well. And this was one little minor convergence that I wanted to just shine a light on. This was part of our strategy on social media. So if you're on LinkedIn or you're on Instagram, JP Morgan's all over that too. So again, but I know I'm a lot skinnier in real life. I get it.
It's funny, I was thinking, we all know you're an economist, but I had no idea you were an Instagram influencer.
Oh, it's the most scary thing to do. It's so weird.
All right, let's go to housing.
All right, let's go. I joined JP Morgan about 18 months, the real estate team about 18 months ago. I've been with JP Morgan a long time. And this concept of all living is good living was something that was pretty pervasive with the group. That's going to change. All living is not good living. Can't just walk in and buy any residential space and say, I'm in good shape here. There are some huge demographic forces that are changing. First is immigration. On the left shows you how immigration as a percent of population has changed in America for the last 200 years. 2023, so looking backwards, was a once in a 100-year surge in immigration. Population grew by 1%, so about 3.5 million people immigrated to America. And now the Trump administration has completely reversed that. Immigration into this country is now the lowest it's been since World War II. So we can't just assume a rising tide of population growth will service our living assets. And on the right, the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, just announced their estimates for population growth. The blue is immigration. Push that aside for a second. The yellow is the difference between births and deaths. And in 2030, the CBO is telling you that there will be more deaths than there are births in this country. Population uplift is not something we can bet on anymore as a reason to want to buy a residential living asset. There's also this other demographic force that's happening in America. There are haves and have-nots. Chase has an unparalleled edge on the consumer. I feel uniquely qualified to say that, because when I worked at the Federal Reserve, if I needed to know what the consumer was doing, I called JP Morgan. Chase, so JP Morgan Chase, we have at least one product in over 50% of American homes. It allows people like me to look at anonymous, aggregated data. Here's something that I wanted to draw to your attention. On the left, the top third of American income earners account for 63% of all income earned. And they account for 57% of all spending in this country. And on the right shows you how that's changed in the last 10 years. The haves just keep having a bigger proportion of all this spending. So the way to read the chart on the right is the percent of Chase card spending done by the top third of income earners. The media talks about this as a K-shaped economy, haves and have-nots. Internally in our group, we talk about artificial intelligence and what will this do to the K-shaped economy. Unanimously, we think the haves will have more and the have-nots will have less. And you can make this a political discussion, I'm not. It's just a critical theme about how we want to own certain assets. If the spending is going to be more concentrated in a certain cohort of Americans, that's the folks we need to cater to, just in a math basis. So this is one of the demographic shifts that not all living is good living anymore. You actually need to be really selective.
Tom talked about selectivity. We've got to be really, really focused on what we do and why. So we'll give you 3 examples in the housing sector and how we're playing them today. Tom also talked about growth. Where is the capital going? Right. So that's really what we look at. First would be student housing, which is Legacy State College. What's been fascinating is, and Tom mentioned this, the population is set to shrink. And guess what? Enrollment largely across the country is shrinking as well, but not in every pocket. So what we found is that schools that have growing enrollment, that have a strong football or basketball program, the power schools, if you will, tend to do better. The other thing that's been fascinating, just on theme for today, is schools that have a great STEM program around science and tech and engineering and mathematics, given where the economy is going, tend to be more resilient, tend to have better cash flow, tend to have higher student counts. Fun fact about this asset too, Penn State's got a 107,000 person stadium, and football drives pretty much everything they do. Whole title of this slide really should be around growth. So growing enrollment on student is really where we're focused. If we think about Darby portfolio, it's in South Carolina. I think the theme here is growing migration trends. So Tom talked a lot about manufacturing, aerospace and defense, what's happening in the Sun Belt, what's happening in some of these lower cost states. Volvo, Mercedes, Boeing, all manufacturing near this site. Tom also talked about haves and have-nots. Workforce housing, very tight market, renter by need population. That's the focus here. And as more jobs come into South Carolina, we expect rental growth will happen as well.
What's the first thing someone does when they move? Maybe they need to get a loan. They file for an application with their bank. Or you get online and change your residency with your financial provider. Financial providers know first where people are moving and is it the haves or have-nots that are moving. This is another data advantage that we use quite a bit.
It's a great example, using our migration data. And then last but not least, Tom talked about the aging population. So today, 18% of the population is over the age of 65. It's amazing. Fast forward 5-10 years, that will go to over 25% of the population will be over the age of 65. So we look at amenities, healthcare, social activities, and we've been really focused on age-restricted housing, which is very, very exciting for us and a real growth driver.
All right, theme number 4, our last one. Office performance in the next 5 years is set to be a driver, not a drag. This chart is showing you, since COVID, office contribution to the overall Odyssey benchmark. All the red you see means office has underperformed. We all know this. But in the most recent quarter, office is now a relative outperformer in the Odyssey index. But not all office is good office. This chart shows you there are, again, haves and have-nots. This chart is showing you the share of office inventory. So we took all of the office inventory and where the vacancy is. All the way to the right, 34% of office buildings have no vacancy. All the way to the left, 10% of office buildings account for over 60% of vacancy. Haves and have-nots. If you double-click into this chart, what you'd see is it's all about the vintage. 2015, buildings made in 2015 or later are seeing availability, or we're seeing absorption and vacancy go down. Whereas every other building, if you're older than 2015, on average, you're seeing vacancy go up. There are haves and have-nots, and the cut on haves and have-nots is the vintage of the building so far. So as you start to look forward, make that relatable. How are younger generations or younger workers changing? What do they want? What do they need? When we look at our data across our office buildings, foot traffic in the buildings is about 80% of what it was pre-COVID. And it's been about that way for about 3 years. We think we are at an equilibrium for return to office. We have returned. We are back. So you can't count on that anymore to uplift these office buildings. There is a structural shift now, and there are haves and have-nots.
All right, let's talk about office. So on the left, you've got the old Union Carbide building. This is the old JP Morgan headquarters. Look at these poor guys toiling away on these MS-DOS machines. Okay, that is the office you don't want. Not enough space, not enough light. Here's what we're learning. And again, we have 44 million square feet of office. Today, to be a winner in office, you have to have office almost meets hospitality. Okay? If you look at kind of where we were versus where we are, you can click the next one, is we have 25% more common areas, 50% more space per employee. You've got 50,000 technology touch points in this building. It knows where we are, electricity usage. You can order anything you want from your phone delivered to your desk. You've got programming from Danny Meyer on the food, which is amazing, a wellness program. It's great for not only JP Morgan employees, but also for our clients. So those that win in office will think about it more like hospitality, and they will think about the wellness of employees and their customers alike. I think the other thing that's just really interesting about where we're going on office is office really hasn't been built in this country since 2020. I think one Vanderbilt was delivered in 2020, 2021. So the only building that's really come into play that's been an A++ building in the last 5 or 6 years is our new headquarters. To be a winner, Tom said it, you've got to be a newer office building that's fully amenitized, and you also have to be on top of transportation. Okay, Tom, we've given them our 4 themes. We've walked them through the macro. We've talked about how we play it. Where are we going to go in the next 5 years?
5 years is a universe. It is a lifetime. It is whatever adjective you want to put that it's really hard to know where you're going to go. We started with the Wall Street Journal from 5 years ago. And that change from then to today is surreal. So this is an AI-generated article, if you look at the date, for 5 years from today, 2031. We had an amazing time with you today. We hope we get invited back. But if we don't, we think this is a newspaper you're going to be reading in 5 years' time. What are the headlines? Top right, stellar commercial real estate run. We think this is an amazing entry point. CIOs are going to use this for diversification. And when you have replacement costs so high relative to where we are in existing values, supply is unlikely to crowd you out. Bottom left, rapid onshoring repairs supply chains. The national defense theme is just going to keep going. And it's likely to take 5 years to repair these supply chains. And then lastly, on the bottom right, aging population redefines how we live. These demographic shifts are so big, we can no longer say all living is good living. Things are changing. Those that don't adapt today are going to find themselves left behind. So we hope you saw from us today what we think are the main drivers for outperformance in the future. Again, if we're not invited back, challenge us. 5 years. Hope you're reading this article. So thank you for having us. Great time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.